Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Top Agent Commercial Wednesdays. And I just apologize for the delay, technical difficulties, but we're ready with a new program from Tommy T, who you may have seen before talking about 1031 exchanges, DST, the upreits, and I love this. He's going to show a new presentation on really how to get some new business using the exchange, using accommodators. I mean, anything that's in this pipeline to get new business or some replacement probably. But Tommy, if you don't mind sharing some of your background, it's very extensive. I know you speak all around. I mean, you probably do these things, multiple times a week. And I'm glad that you get to share a new presentation on really how to grow your real estate business, how to use the exchange, the DSTs, and other products that you may have, and the upreit to share it with our audience today, because I know a lot of stuff. And maybe you could share a little bit about the DST market with everyone also.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, hope everybody's having a great week. I see a lot of familiar faces on here. So hey to everybody. I see April on here. I see a bunch of familiar faces. So hope everybody's doing well. Yeah, Jim, thanks for having me. If you guys don't know who I am, my name is Tommy Thompson. I am a private wealth management advisor with Fortitude Investment Group. I'm located down here at a Palm Beach area, Palm Beach, Florida. And I run a division of Fortitude. Fortitude's a national private wealth management company. And we have a really unique focus. We focus in a product called a Delaware Statutory Trust, or a DST, which I'm going to get into today. So I'm going to go through some of the different pillars that we have at Fortitude. I'm going to talk about some of the different services that we provide. And specifically, I'm going to talk about today how to prospect using the 1031 exchange, and also some other different product types inside of real estate in addition to the DST. So I'm not just solely going to teach you how to use the DST, the product that we focus on, to get leads. I'm going to kind of try and showcase how to use the 1031 in general for you guys to get some more leads today. So really excited about this presentation that I'm going to pull up here. Jim, can I share my screen? Let me try here. There we go.
Perfect.
I'm just going to leave it in this view here, guys. I know you can see kind of everything in the sidebar. I'm just going to leave it like this just so I can kind of bounce around a little bit today. So we're going to keep this a little fluid for you guys and hopefully kind of fun and engaging. So like I said, my name's Tommy Thompson. I am Southeast Vice President of Fortitude Investment Group. I'm a licensed financial representative. I'll go ahead and drop my contact information in the chat box here today. So all this stuff throughout this presentation, you're going to see some QR codes. You're going to see some different literature that you guys can download on here. I do have these links that I'm going to drop in the chat too. So if you don't have time to pull your phone out and download some of these, don't worry, I'm going to drop all these links in the chat box. You can also visit 1031zone.com. All of these downloads are on 1031zone.com as well. And we also post on there some webinars that we do. We do a lot of webinars. Jim knows I'm like the webinar king and the 1031 and DST world. I've been doing Zooms and Zoom before Zooms were cool, I guess you could say. So around 9 years now, I did my first Zoom. I think I had 2 people on that, and one of them was probably my mom, and it evolved into what it is today. I probably do the most of any other DST advisor in the U.S. at least once per month, and I've traveled all around the United States speaking. I'm a national public speaker on 1031 exchanges, DSTs, tax efficient investment solutions in real estate. Also, what falls into that category is going to be opportunity zones. I was on the forefront of that when that came out in 2017 as well. And then if you guys are just curious kind of some of the other stuff that we do, because we're a private wealth management firm, we also work a lot with real estate agents that are looking to invest passively into real estate. And that could be with cash or retirement account proceeds. So if you're looking to get exposure into real estate, invest into high quality institutional sponsor companies, private equity real estate companies. We have a lot of different funds that fall outside of the capital gains kind of 1031 exchange pillar that we focus on. And a lot of real estate professionals are our clients. So we don't do stocks. I don't do bonds. I don't do mutual funds. I don't do any of that traditional stuff. So if you have an Ameriprise advisor, Merrill Lynch advisor, or whoever you use, we fall into that real estate category. I don't want to do the options trading for you and the stock trading and all that. We just want to build that real estate portion of your portfolio. So when we're talking about 1031 exchanges, guys, I always have to tell everybody I am not a CPA. I'm not a tax attorney. Always consult with a CPA and a tax attorney. But when I'm speaking to real estate professionals, I always say, and especially when we're talking about prospecting, right? How to get leads using this stuff. That's what I travel around the country and talk to real estate professionals about. And I mean, Jim and I didn't even talk about it in the beginning of this call, but Jim actually brought me in to EXP Commercial when he launched the division inside of EXP and built that entire thing out. He brought me in to teach agents how to get leads using the 1031 exchange. And Jim, I don't know how many presentations I did. I did once, I think
A
one every
lot,
week,
a
one
lot.
every week at one point, one
Yes.
every other week is what we kind of ended up backing into. And then I phased out at doing one per month. And I think those are still running inside of EXP. I can't remember because I do so many at this point, but I always told the agents in there, I said, don't try and crunch numbers for people on taxes, right? You always want to take that liability off of yourself and have them speak to their CPA. Is this right for you to consider doing, Mr. or Mrs. Client? You own this property, you bought it 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. It's probably appreciated since then, especially if you bought in a good market, could be heavily appreciated. Well, I'd sell, but I think I'm going to have a large tax bill, right? You can do some napkin math, right? And try and kind of crunch some numbers, or maybe they already have, using, 15 or 20% federal capital gains rate. But it really depends on what state they're in. It depends on what their basis is in that property, what improvements they've done, if they have a loan, right? There's all these different things that factor into that, what losses they have. So always tell them to consult with their CPA, but I'm trying to land the plane at something here. Tell them, hey, put me in touch with your CPA. Let's try and figure out if the 1031 is something that you should consider. And the reason why I say that is because CPAs are hands down, maybe the best, but definitely one of the best referral sources that any of us in this industry can have. So, you get to one CPA that has 1,200 clients instead of trying to go individually and get one client at a time. If a CPA gets to know you as somebody who can help a client through a 1031 exchange and you're knowledgeable about this stuff, that could be an incredible referral source for you. So don't miss that opportunity. One, always tell them to consult with their CPA. Two, try and get in the door with that CPA. So when we're talking about DSTs today, DSTs are securities. So you have to be an accredited investor to invest into a DST. This is not a term that we make up at Fortitude here. This is a financial industry term. To get access to certain types of investments, you have to qualify as what they call an accredited investor. So what that means, you can qualify generally in two different ways. There's some other ways you can qualify, but generally you can qualify in two different ways. The first way that you can qualify is if you make $200,000 a year in income and you did that the last 2 calendar years, filing single. Okay, so if you make 200 grand or more and you file single in each of the last 2 calendar years, you would qualify as an accredited investor. If you file jointly as a married couple and you each together as a household made $300,000 a year in each of the last 2 calendar years, you would qualify as an accredited investor. And the last way that a lot of people qualify is with the $1 million minimum net worth qualification. So that's a mouthful, right? But really what that is if you tally up your entire financial picture, so your 401k, your retirement accounts, your IRA, cash on hand, CDs, money markets, all the stocks you own, everything. And the big one here too that factors into that is the value of your real estate portfolio, not your primary residence. Your primary residence is excluded from this equation, but your entire financial picture, inclusive of your investment real estate portfolio. So as you guys can imagine, a lot of folks come to us, they have other investments outside of real estate generally. But if they have a portfolio of investment properties that exceeds $1 million and they don't have a large amount of debt on that portfolio, just that real estate typically qualifies somebody as an accredited investor. And that's the way that you can invest into what we're going to get into today, or a portion of it into the DST. If you have any questions on that, just reach out to me. We only work generally with accredited investors on all the different programs that we have. So you do have to qualify in either of those two different ways if you want access to any of the investment programs that we offer at Fortitude. So Just a little bit more about us here. I'm not going to harp too much about this here, but we have offices in New York, New Jersey, California, down here in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. And guys, you're kind of getting the premise here. We work with people who own investment properties. That's our primary client base. Typically, folks that we're working with built businesses that own real estate, own commercial real estate, own investment properties, Airbnbs, long-term rentals. Maybe they had an HVAC company that they managed for years, and that HVAC company owns the warehouse that they park the trucks and they have their equipment at. And now 30 years has gone by and they're looking to sell that business, which also owns real estate, and they're looking to retire. So that's typically the type of client that we're working with. Somebody who's getting to that stage in their life where they're tired of working, they're tired of doing all this stuff themselves, they're tired of doing the improvements on the property and fixing the water heater when it breaks, and they're looking to kind of take a passive role in their portfolio. So we specialize in these tax efficient exit solutions and estate planning services with these different investors. And we've done that over 2,000 times through the 1031 exchange. We kind of quarterback the conversation. We quarterback the transaction. We don't act as the qualified intermediary. We were going to have Justin Amos with JTC Americas on here today. JTC is a qualified intermediary. Those are the folks that hold the proceeds in the exchange, right? So you sell a property, those proceeds go into the qualified intermediary's third-party escrow account because you cannot take constructive receipt of those proceeds. If you do, you'll owe taxes, right? So we don't act as the QI. We just quarterback the transaction with our client alongside the QI. And we've done that over 2,000 times. And we've placed over $3 billion in client exchange proceeds through 1031 proceeds. And this last bullet point here, our firm has actually done the largest DST transaction in history. So we're the record holders for the largest DST transaction ever performed. That's that $176 million deal you see down there at the bottom. But we do transactions from $50,000 all the way up to the largest and most complex ones. So this is one of our guidebooks here, guys. Like I said, I'm going to drop these links in the chat. Don't feel like you have to get these QR codes here. This is our 1031 guidebook. This is our 1031 exchange checklist. I'll drop these in the chat before we wrap up today. So I'll touch briefly on this here because all real estate professionals out there should be talking about this constantly, right? And I know this sounds maybe like a broken record to some of you because I know a lot of you stay really up to date on this stuff, but it's the baby boomer demographic that's exiting, right? That is retiring. They're saying 10,000 plus baby boomers are turning 65 years old every day. A lot of those baby boomers built businesses that we own today, that we use today, right? The laundromat, service places, the air conditioning companies, the plumbing and heating companies, the electrical contracting companies, architectural firms, CPA firms, law firms, doctor offices. I mean, you name it, man. You just go down the list here, and it is absolutely incredible when you really start wrapping your head around this. And the fascinating thing to me is a lot of people work with these people all the time, right? And sometimes just a simple question is all it takes, right? Maybe it's your doctor that you've been going to for 20 or 30 years, and you say, hey, doc, when do you plan on retiring? I mean, are you going to do this forever? No, I've actually been thinking about, retiring in the next couple of years, right? Or maybe it's your CPA, right? A lot of CPA firms are very valuable. A lot of private equity companies want to buy CPA firms, right? Those are valuable practices to buy. And a lot of CPAs, as we all know, are pretty conservative. A lot of them own the office condo that they're located in or the office building that they operate their business out of. So that's a business sale and that's a real estate sale, right? So, just having this on the forefront here is so important to know, but also when they say, well, I'd sell, but man, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I'm going to owe so much money in taxes when I sell. What are my options, right? So that's the premise, the underlying current of this entire presentation that I talk about today, knowing what to say when somebody brings up, well, I don't really know what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to owe a lot of money in taxes. I don't know what I do with my money, right? So these things here are kind of the triggers. This is why I built this presentation out, to give you guys kind of certain triggers to try and have in your mind when you're out in the field. So when you're talking to somebody who owns investment real estate properties, you're going to start hearing similar things. You're going to hear, well, my kids aren't involved. They don't know the first thing about real estate. If they inherited my portfolio, they wouldn't know what to do. Or, I tried having, my kids involved and it just didn't work out. So asking them, are your kids involved in your real estate portfolio? That's such a powerful question because when you ask somebody that, they love talking about their real estate and their kids, right? So I mean, they're gonna tell you, they're gonna go, no, man, my kid's a doctor, my kid's a school teacher, or my kid's a firefighter, or maybe they don't even live near them. And they're gonna go, well, I don't really know what I'm gonna do yet. I don't know when I'm gonna sell, but my kids definitely aren't gonna take over our real estate portfolio. So just having that knowledge is so important because that tells you they're probably gonna sell at some point, right? They're going to sell something at some point, right? And then, I mean, another question you could ask is, well, I mean, if your kids aren't going to take it over, do you plan on, hiring a management company, eventually? Or Jim, are you going to do this yourself forever? Are you going to be 80 years old picking up, debris in the parking lot, right? When there's a storm. So just having these things in the back of your mind, I mean, these are real life situations. We work on these all the time, right? I hear this stuff all the time. It's not cheesy. Bad tax advice, a lot of CPAs are not up to speed about the 1031. So they will tell clients, just pay the taxes now. It's the cheapest tax, you'll ever pay, right? It's only going to go up over time. Well, the way to combat that, and it's not combating, it's, this is the 1031 has been around for over 100 years as a part of the tax code for a reason. And there's a reason why so many people lobby to keep it in effect every year. I mean, people are lobbying to protect and preserve the 1031 exchange because it's a recycling tool, right? It allows maybe an older investor that's going to owe a lot of money in taxes to exchange that property into something else that may be less management intensive and let a new, younger buyer step in and do the TLC on the property that's necessary. Because if the owner of that property was going to get whacked in taxes, right? And it's a $10 million property and they're going to owe 30 or 40% in taxes, right? Because you start adding this up in certain states, 20% federal, right? And then you have any state taxes like California is going to be, California has a lot of different taxes that are involved with it, but you have the NIT tax, which is around 3.5%. That's the Obamacare tax. You have depreciation recapture, which is really the big one, right? If your basis is zero on a property and you took all the benefits of that depreciation over the years, the depreciation recapture really adds up on a property. And that could be what gets you into that 30, 35+% area of taxes being owed. So, of course, these are all hypothetical situations. I said, bring the CPA in to these situations all the time. Don't try crunching these numbers yourself. But don't be surprised when the client comes back and says, oh, my CPA just said, pay the taxes. It's the cheapest tax I'll ever pay, right? I would usually say in those situations, you may want to get a second opinion. If your CPA didn't at least consider what are the options on the other side of the 1031, and you're going to have a very large tax bill, and that's a hard pill to swallow, then you may want to get a second opinion. We have a lot of clients that switch CPAs in these situations. Never assume that the CPA is up to speed on this stuff. Hesitant about selling due to a large tax bill. You're going to hear this as you're talking on the phone with people, as you're making cold calls, as you're out there prospecting. I would sell, but I don't know what I'm going to do because I'm going to have a large tax bill due. I mean, I used to do a lot of cold calling. I used to be in the net lease space in commercial real estate, and I used to do the Arby's, the Walgreens, the CVS's, Dollar Generals, Home Depot, Best Buys, and I would cold call a lot of people, and I would hear that all the time. And I'll never forget the first time I said to somebody, hey, he owned a couple Dunkin' Donuts, and I said, hey, what's the lease term remaining? And did the whole thing. And he said, Tommy, I don't want to sell. If I sell, I'm gonna have a huge tax bill. And I said, well, do you know what a 1031 exchange is? And he goes, kid, I've been doing 1031 exchanges for 30 years, and hung up on me. Right. So after that, I started saying, have you considered doing a 1031 with these proceeds? Because, this is a really powerful tool that a lot of people utilize. And then when it comes down to it, the last one here, do you want to be more passive? Right. And that kind of plays into this whole presentation here. I'm not going to harp into the basics around the 1031, guys, I'm sorry. I'm going to try and use this time today to give you a lot of tools and resources for some of the more high level people on here. I hope that's okay, Jim, unless you want me to go through the basics here. All right. So I mean, just really the basics around the 1031 is, you own an investment property. If you exchange that for another investment property, then you're not going to owe taxes. So you see no gain shall be recognized if you exchange one property, that's an investment property, for another property, that's an investment property. The only thing that I'll harp on here a little bit is the property that you're exchanging from or into has to be held either for productive use in a trade or business. So the only reason why I'm going to bring that up is because it mentions business. So, like I said, a lot of businesses are going to be trading hands, guys. This is already happening, and it's only going to pick up steam. We're only at the tip of the iceberg on this. So, people that own a business, okay, and I like using the air conditioning company, the HVAC company, as an example. Maybe because my dad's a plumber, maybe because I grew up in that trade industry. But it's a service-based business. A lot of private equity companies are buying HVAC companies, and they're extremely profitable. I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing, right? Because they come and they maintain and service your air conditioning unit they even have these service accounts, right, that you sign up for. Maybe it's a couple $100 a year, and they come out and they make sure everything's running good, right, and change filters and things like that. So they're really valuable because it has a SaaS model associated with it, recurring revenue. But a lot of these air conditioning companies, they bought buildings in the warehouse districts, right? They have a large warehouse that they keep their supplies, they have their trucks, the guys meet there in the morning, they give them their objectives, and then they go out and kind of take over and do their whole day, right? A lot of those warehouse districts have become super popular. It's really expensive now. A lot of breweries have gone in there, and just it's kind of the new hip thing is these different warehouse districts. So if somebody was looking to sell an air conditioning company, right, there's going to be two different values placed on the sale. One side of the sale, let's call that X, is going to be the business. Maybe the business is valued at $5 million. Well, the real estate, which is going to be separate here, we'll call that Y, that's going to be maybe valued at $10 million, right? So maybe the real estate is worth more than the business is because now it's in the line of gentrification in one of these really popular areas. So when somebody owns a business that owns real estate, you cannot 1031 exchange the business sale proceeds. They changed that in 2017 under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. You can only exchange the real estate portion of that sale. So for any business brokers on the line or for anybody that's looking to get into business brokerage, you need to know this, right? Talk to your CPA and find out what the value of the business is or the real estate. A lot of the CPAs aren't going to know. So you may want to get an appraisal done or a broker opinion of value on the business, what the business is worth without the real estate and what the real estate is worth without the business. Okay. And you can exchange the real estate portion of those proceeds. So instead of getting, a $15 million tax bill on the entire sale, maybe the business is worth 5 and you can 1031 the real estate, which is worth 10. Okay. So just knowing that, because that may change how you negotiate in the deal. If the client thinks he's paying taxes on the full 15 million, he may want to stay firm at a certain price. But if you can tell him, hey, we can exchange this part of the proceeds into another property and you can be passive, maybe that changes how you can negotiate a little bit. Maybe they're willing to take a little bit more because they know they're keeping more in their pocket. So basics around the 1031, you sell one investment property, you enter into your exchange, right? Those proceeds go to what's called a qualified intermediary, and you have 45 days to identify and 180 days to close, right? So 45 days to ID. So let's say your closing date is, man, it's already coming up on September. I don't know if September 1st is a weekend. Let's check quick. I always hate using an example and then it's like a Sunday. So September 1st is Monday, so that's perfect. So let's say you have a closing coming up September 1st, Monday, 2 p.m. in the afternoon. You're planning on closing on your air conditioning company or your client's air conditioning company. They're exchanging a part of those proceeds that's affiliated with real estate. September 1st comes around, 2 p.m. That $10 million sale proceed price comes in through the buyer to buy the property, and those proceeds go into the qualified intermediary's third-party escrow account, not your client's bank account. They cannot go into your client's bank account. So the closing company needs to know that your client's doing an exchange. The qualified intermediary should be working with your client, the broker or the closing company, notating on the contract ahead of time that you're doing a 1031 exchange. So everybody's on the same page. So that wire goes directly to the QI. So when that happens, you'll have 45 days to ID and 180 days to close. These are some fun dates here. This is something new that I put in here. Try and avoid your 45th day landing on one of these dates. Really, this is a high level tool here. If you want to kind of set yourself apart a little bit from other agents out there, try and bring this up. Hey, Mr. Client, we're closing on this date just to let you know your 45th day is falling on New Year's or the day before New Year's. There's probably going to be a lot of people out of town. They're going to be traveling. It's going to be impossible to get anybody on the line. So we're probably going to lose 5 to 7 days in our 45-day window. So we want to have this buttoned up the week before. Okay, we want to have this identification form in place the week before New Year's. Or if it falls on Christmas, or if it falls on any of these big holidays here, try and avoid that, or at least let your client know, hey, I crunched the numbers and I found out our 45th day is falling on a national holiday. So we're probably going to lose a couple days. All right. So don't wait till the last minute. So now getting into the DST, and actually, before I do that, I'll talk about some other solutions here. And guys, I am breezing through some of this. When you're doing an exchange, you have to replace equal or greater value of what you sold. If if you sold for $1 million and $1 million goes into the QI account, you're gonna have a full exchange, a full deferral, right? Because you're deferring or exchanging the full amount of the sale price. But if you sold for $1 million and you only want to exchange 800,000 because you want to pull 200 grand out, you'll just owe taxes on whatever you don't replace. It's not the end of the world. It's called a partial exchange. So, a lot of people do that. They want some dry powder. They want to pull some money out of the deal. Not a big deal. Just let them know whatever you don't exchange, you're going to owe, taxes on. Another big thing too is if your client has debt when they're selling. So if you sell for 5 million bucks, a commercial property, strip center, apartment building, whatever it is, if your client sells for $5 million, but they have a $2.5 million loan at the time of sale, that's a 50% LTV. So 50% of that is equity, 50% of that is debt. When they sell, $5 million comes in from the buyer. 2.5 million of that in the form of that debt that's in place gets paid off, right? You don't take your loan with you. So the remaining 2.5 million goes into the exchange account. But the IRS says, I don't care how you do it, but you still have to replace 5 million. So that's either getting a new loan in the amount of $2.5 million or more and buying a property for $5 million or more, or injecting cash into the deal, which goes dollar for dollar for the debt that you have to replace. But the IRS doesn't care how you do it. Whatever you sold for, you have to replace. That's with a combo of cash and equity or using debt in the next property. So just keep that in mind. The debt is considered taxable debt boot. A lot of people don't know that or realize that until it's too late. So now we're getting into the part of the presentation where we're talking about, well, Tommy, this sounds great. I have some clients that are like this. I know the doctors. I know the HVAC company guys. I know the people that have ran businesses forever. I know these legacy commercial real estate owners that own these properties that, weren't in the nicest area 20, 30 years ago, and now they're on the corner of Main and Main, and the real estate is worth so much money, right? And I know their kids aren't involved because their kids go to school with my kids. I was talking to him the other day and he was complaining about tenants and he was tired of it and, wanted to enjoy the fruits of their labor and, kind of ride off into the sunset. So what are the options? All right. So first one here is going to be net lease real estate. That's what I told you. I have a background in net lease real estate. I used to do this all the time. The Dunkin' Donuts, the Arby's, the Dollar Generals, Walgreens, all the different, Chick-fil-A. That's a really popular one. Everybody loves Chick-fil-A. I see Jim, nod his head there. It's so popular. I've watched those cap rates get so compressed with Chick-fil-A's. Wawa, right? Wawa is another good one. But yeah, so what you're seeing on the screen here is CVS. All these different mega tenants that we drive by all the time, maybe publicly traded companies or behemoth private companies, they will sign a lease and it'll be a long-term lease. Maybe 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years. I don't know how common the 20-year ones are anymore. I think they started to kind of come down a little bit. I know a lot of leases used to be 20. I think a lot are 10 or 15 years now. But I'm sure there's more qualified people on the line here to talk about that than me. But a 10-year, 15 or 20-year lease with a tenant like CVS, and they're going to take care of all of the property expenses, everything. They don't want to deal, they don't want you to deal with anything. And the reason why they don't want you to deal with anything is because they probably don't trust everybody to do everything that's needed to do on the property level, except for themselves. They want to pay the property taxes because they don't want back taxes on the property. They want to pay the insurance because they want to make sure the insurance is in place on the property in case there's a storm. They want to redo the parking lot when it needs to be redone because they don't want to lean on you to have to redo the parking lot. They want it to have a nice ingress, egress. They want their flow to be good, the parking lot to look nice. They want people to want to come in to their facility. And maybe CVS is a bad example because I've been to a lot of CVSs that are kind of crappy. I'm not going to lie, but maybe CVS and Walgreens are not the best example anymore. But what you're seeing too, that's a good point, is there's some headwinds going on with CVS and Walgreens. Maybe they're going to vacate a lot of those locations, right? That's kind of TBD right now. The stock has been kind of crushed over the years because they have to redo their business model. So that's a risk that's associated with net lease. But if you go to a Chick-fil-A, the parking lot's beautiful, the whole thing, right? And Wawa and all that stuff. So they want to take care of everything. The structure, if there's any structural issues, they'll pay for. The roof, when it needs to be replaced, everything. That's a true triple net lease. And I know there's a couple different terms for that. NNN leases, net lease, you can even call it net lease sometimes, triple net lease, true triple net lease. There's a couple different terms out there for it. But you want to make sure that you're working with a professional that knows what they're doing in the net lease space. So for those agents that are on the line right now, and you're not that familiar with this sector, I always tell agents, listen, stay in your lane, do what you're good at, partner with a net lease agent or broker that knows what they're doing, get less out of the deal, but they're going to get it closed for you. You have to know what you're doing here. There are so many different subsectors and genres of net lease. You have QSR, which is quick service restaurants. That's the Chick-fil-A's, that's the Taco Bell's, the McDonald's. You have these necessity net lease or necessity retail, tenants sector as well, which is the CVS, and Walgreens. You have medical also, these micro hospitals and things like that. These are all very specialty areas of net lease. So I always say just partner with an agent that knows what they're doing in these different sectors here, because you have to know how these leases are structured too. A good net lease agent that works with CVS and Walgreens all the time, they've seen their lease 1,000 times. I mean, when I was doing this, I remember knowing exactly what was in Panera Bread's leases, right? They're very unique, right? You can even get a part of some of the store sales if they hit certain benchmarks and things like that on some of their locations. So, really intricate. So make sure you're working with a good agent that knows what they're doing, because the last one here, double net lease, that's when you start getting into it, man. That's when you start getting into it. You need to know what's in these leases. People need to have an attorney that they hire to look through them. You want to take some liability off of yourself, right? You don't want to say you're the one reading these leases for somebody, because these are legal documents. These are big companies, right? They want to try and catch you if they can. They don't want to pay for everything on the property level if they don't have to. So the double net is really where it gets a little finicky. Maybe they're not going to pay for the roof when it needs to be replaced. And I see some really savvy people on the line here. You know how expensive those roofs can be on CVS and Walgreens. They've just gone up in price even more over the years. So this is one option here, is the net lease space. This is probably the most popular, the most historical one, right? You own an apartment building, you own a business, you own, whatever it is, and you're selling something that's, got a good price tag affiliated with it, because those CVS and Walgreens aren't cheap, man. I mean, they're $7 to $14 million to buy one of those. They've gone up substantially over the years. But it's a lot of money to buy one of those. All your eggs are in one basket, with having that's a large amount of money to have into one single tenant. So that's just something to consider. Maybe you want to buy a couple net lease properties, maybe a Chick-fil-A, a Dollar General, a Dunkin' Donuts, so you start getting into that diversification conversation. Maybe you don't want to chase cap rates, right? Maybe cap rates on a Dollar General in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, is a 9% cap rate. and your client's chasing that, but it's like, Mr. and Mrs. Client, if they leave this location, it's gonna be really difficult to backfill that. Maybe we don't want to chase cap rates. You want to buy good real estate. I think Donald Trump was, when everybody used to love Donald Trump, he used to say something all the time that said, great real estate is great all the time. Good real estate is good sometimes, right? So, maybe just having that conversation with somebody like, let's look at we might get a less of a return, but this property is in a great market on the corner of Main and Main, great ingress, egress. The real estate value is only going to go up over time. Yes, you're going to make less money, but if they ever leave, at least this is a really easy location to backfill, right? So another option, I'm actually going to skip this one here, was tenant in common or TIC real estate, but it's not as popular anymore. So before I get into the DST, just because I don't want to be, selfish here and just try and have you guys, learn solely about DSTs, which I am going to go through in depth here. But, another thing that you could do is, recommend that somebody hires a property management company, as well. Maybe they don't want to sell. Maybe they don't want to do a cash out refi, pull out some tax-free dollars and just hold the property and hire a management company. So for those of you that maybe have that management arm, that is something else that maybe, could be beneficial for you as these different owners look to become, more passive in the deal there. So, but the DST that we specialize in stands for Delaware Statutory Trust. And essentially what it is, guys, in a nutshell, is I'm just going to kind of direct your eyes over to the right-hand side of the screen there. You're going to see a large institutional building in the background of that. Oh, sorry. Trying to pull this over a little. You're going to see a large institutional building in the background here on the right-hand side. This was one of our past DST offerings that we had on the menu. I remember this deal really well. If you look close enough, you'll see in the top right corner, it says Zurich on the side of that building. Zurich, if you watch the PGA Tour at all, you'll see Zurich on a lot of the golf polos. It's a big sponsor, one of the largest insurance companies in the world. This was their North American headquarters campus in Chicago. So this was over a $200 million asset, and an investor can buy a slice of the pizza, a slice of a property like that, a $200+ million property, for as little as $100,000 using their 1031 exchange proceeds. So it gives retail investors access to high quality institutional companies that typically only REITs can buy, in multi-billion dollar, real estate companies. So if you don't want all of your eggs in one basket with one Dollar General or Walgreens, you even want to divvy that up across, really high quality assets, the DST allows accredited investors to have the ability to do that. So at Fortitude here, we have a website that you can go on, you can create an account, and you can look at all the different DSTs that we currently have available on our menu. And they're going to range across, industrial properties like you're seeing on the screen here. This is another past offering that we had, an Amazon distribution center. This was around 1 million square foot, brand new construction Amazon center with over a 10-year lease on it. And again, you could buy a slice of the pizza of a property like this for as little as $100,000. Now, this one here, this is unique because, like I said before, if you sell a property and you have debt on it at the time of sale, like I said, you sell for $5 million, you have a $2.5 million loan. The IRS doesn't care how you do it, but you have to replace $5 million. So a lot of people get a new loan in the next deal that they're buying. A lot of people don't want to come out of pocket $2.5 million to inject cash into the deal. They'd rather use OPM, other people's money. So one of the great benefits of the DST is, I'll use this one as an example. This Amazon center was a 50% leverage point DST. So that means that it was a $100 million asset. The sponsor company used their money to go out and buy this property. They used $50 million cash and $50 million debt. So they got a loan for 50% on this, for $50 million. So what that means to people that are doing exchanges or people that are looking at the DST, if you buy $5 million slice of this property, it comes with $5 million in non-recourse debt. So you're essentially buying $10 million of real estate. Or if you buy $1 million slice of this property, it comes with $1 million of non-recourse debt. So you're buying $2 million of real estate. So if you have 50% leverage to replace, like that example I was using, if you have debt to replace and you buy into a DST that has debt, you're also buying that leverage percentage, that leverage point in the deal as well. It's non-recourse to you. You don't get underwrote for the loan. It doesn't go on your DTI. You just get the benefit of purchasing that debt that helps you replace that debt boot that you have. And when you really wrap your head around that, guys, it's one of the most powerful pieces of the DST, really, when you really understand that. A lot of people don't want to get a loan right now. Maybe, leverage is expensive. Maybe they're trying to keep their DTI low, whatever it is. The DST is a really great solution for that. But just some of the characteristics here, I've gone through this a million times. You're passive. These multi-billion-dollar real estate companies are the ones that are managing these properties for you. You have all the expertise of these giant institutions that are managing these properties. You have diversification. These are not blind pools. You know exactly what it is that you're buying. When we show a DST portfolio to somebody, all of these properties are already purchased by the sponsor company. So just like you've done due diligence for all of those years on all the other real estate that you've bought, you get as much information on these individual assets as you want, and you can do all of your DD on this. What are the demographics? What are the lease terms? What's the financing? How's the market look around there? What are the growth metrics? All the due diligence information that you want and more is available when you're looking into each one of these different DSTs. And then the last one here, the tax deferred exit, when they sell. So this Amazon center is probably coming up for a sale here in the next couple of years, and they're going to liquidate this. When that happens, investors that are in this deal, they're in this deal just like they're in any deal. At the end of the hold period, they can cash out and pay their taxes. They can do a 1031 exchange into another property and manage it themselves, or they can 1031 into another DST. It's just like a regular real estate closing. You're just a fractional owner in a larger deal. So this is a really good piece here. I don't have the link in front of me right now, but I would encourage all of you to scan this if you can. And I will try and get this to everybody after the fact. Let me just make sure this link still works. Yeah, so for those of you that want to scan this, this is a really great piece that I put together. I'll try and drop this link in the chat box before we wrap up here. I know we're running short on time. But these are I put this together because I've done a lot of calls over the years when I was doing net lease, and then just kind of my whole experience here, getting with the DST side of stuff over the last 8 or 9 years. I put this together using my experience as a real estate professional and financial professional to try and help you guys with when you're making calls out there or when you're getting questions. So the first one here is owns appreciated real estate. I would sell, but I will have a large tax bill. And my response to that always is, have you considered doing a 1031 exchange? Guys, it's that simple. Have you considered doing a 1031? And the reason why I have that there, it's a loaded question, okay? Instead of saying, do you know what a 1031 is? A lot of people know what that is. A lot of very savvy investors know what that is. You don't want to ask them that. It's almost insulting, right? If they own a large portfolio. Have you considered performing a 1031 on this property, Jim? And the answer to that is going to tell you what direction to take the conversation. Some people are going to say, what is that? And they need a ground up education. Some people are going to say, I've heard of that, but they need an education. Other people are going to say, yeah, I do a couple of those a year. Right? So if they need an education, okay, well, let's talk to your CPA. Let's, figure some stuff out, right? It tells you what direction to take the conversation. That simple question. And it works, guys. I use this stuff. Okay, so I know it works. Second one here, looking towards retirement. What is your exit plan? Simple question. What's your exit plan? If they don't have an answer right away, again, they probably need to talk to their CPA. Okay, let's value your portfolio. Let's see what you have here. Which ones don't you like? Which ones are your favorites? Let's start kind of piecing together a plan here. Some people are going to have a plan like that. They're going to know exactly what they want to do. Majority of people are not going to have an exit plan. It's funny because when you sit down with a financial planner, you plan everything. You do the reverse math. Okay, I want to retire by this age and I want to have this lifestyle. And you can reverse engineer that whole equation. You need to have this much money in retirement to get to the lifestyle that you want. Real estate investors don't do this. They don't have an exit plan. They're like, just plan on holding this stuff forever. So if you can come up with a nice, if you can come up with an easy, convenient way to have a conversation with a real estate investor that has some algorithms in there, okay, well, let's set this up for you. Let me help you build an exit plan. Let's look out 5 years from now. Let's go, okay, well, let's time the market right. Let's get everything prepped. Let's get all the tenants in there. Let's get our leases together. And let's start planning for an exit. If you can help somebody with that, there's a lot of people out there that need that help. They don't know the right estate planning attorneys to talk to. Their CPA is semi-retired, right? They're even scared to ask them, questions because they're their friend or, whatever. So there's a big need for this. And if you don't plan on exiting, are you always going to self-manage your assets? So maybe you say, what's your exit plan? They go, oh, I'm never exiting. I'm never selling, whatever. All right. Well, I mean, are you always going to self-manage, your properties? I mean, we have clients that are 85 years old that are tired of going to the property. They literally do go to the property, guys. I'm not joking. I mean, when there's a storm, there's trees down. They're supposed to have people go there to pick up the debris, but then they get calls that there's something else there, whatever. And you're going on site, you're checking stuff out. I mean, it just is what it is, right? So do you always plan on doing that? And then the third one here, estate planning. Are your children involved in managing a real estate portfolio? I'm telling you right now, this is one of the most powerful questions that you can ask somebody. They love talking about their kids and they love talking about their real estate portfolios. When you ask somebody, are your children involved? Right? And they say, no, I don't think so. I mean, these are all loaded questions. They're going to tell you, okay, well, if their kids aren't going to be involved, that probably tells me they're going to sell at some point. Right? So you guys get what I'm saying here, right? If you don't have children, what happens upon your passing to your assets? Such a powerful question to have. Having estate planning attorneys, that's a great contact to have. Also a really great referral source for you guys. So the more, leads you can send to these different estate planning attorneys that are quality leads, you're really helping people both sides of the aisle there. The chances really intensify of getting leads back from an estate planning attorney because they know, hey, listen, April or Scott or Max, they're out there helping people. They're really asking the right questions. Do you have an estate plan set up? Do you have an exit plan set up? Are your children involved? These are all great questions. And then the last one here, have you asked your CPA if a 1031 is something you should consider? It's a great one, right? And they're going to say, no, I haven't, whatever. But what I'm going to tell you is going to happen is when you ask them that and they say, no, I haven't asked them, they're going to call you back 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, or the next time you see them or talk to them, and they're going to go, hey, I did bring that up to my CPA. And they said, yeah, I probably should consider that. And that is telling you that they probably are thinking of selling because they asked their CPA that. So Jim, I'm going to
Yeah,
start
just
slowing
if
down
you
here.
if you have your contact information, because Tommy can go for hours, but yeah, as you can see, it's a wealth of knowledge. I use Tommy and his company to do my family's exchange, and you're right. I was fortunate, my sister and I were involved early, but a lot of times you need to know they're talking about stepped up basis, and these are private things, but when you become a consultant with this knowledge, bringing in experts, it prepares, and asking the hard questions. We all know as good commercial agents, you got to ask the hard questions. Otherwise, you're just going to be in a load of issues later or scrambling, like you said, Tommy. And I love the dates. I've been there where the dates landed, and I'll tell you, sometimes it's not the American, yeah, the U.S. holidays. It's the Jewish holidays sometimes, or other ethnic
Yeah.
holidays, and they're just gone. So you should really look at holidays. I'm glad you brought that up. But Tommy, if you could put your information in, thank you again for speaking and sharing, and really using these tips and tricks. And you're right, sometimes you don't need to do exchange, pull some money out, let a property management handle it still, leverage it. If rates go down, positive leverage. There's all these good things, but reach out to Tommy Thompson, learn this. And I love that you did this updated deck, Tommy. It's very powerful. Any final words before we close out?
Yeah, no, just reach out to me. If you guys have any questions, I love working on this stuff. Obviously, our systems are really simple. We usually do the consultation call. We love when the agents are on there with the client. It's the same thing, plug and play every time. It's an education process. We can build a hypothetical DST portfolio to look through. And, really at the end of the day, it's a great tool for you guys to have because we don't get the DST side if you guys can't help sell the property. So we're really incentivized to really help the client out, and just provide that kind of exit solution for them on the back end. And once we get to a certain point and they say, hey, this sounds great, I want to do this, that's where we stop and we go, all right, well, now it's your guys' job to sell the property, right? So get out there, list it, get the highest price you can for it, and that exit solution is on the back end. So reach out to me if you guys have any questions at all. And Jim, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Always, Tommy, thank you. And thank you for helping me on the exchange with our family. And there may
Yeah.
be another one or two coming up. So, everyone, thank you again for joining us on Top Agent Commercial Wednesdays. We look forward to seeing you again with cutting edge topics that really help your business. So, again, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day. Bye bye, everyone.
See you guys.